Yo, what's up? What's going on? What's good, everybody? That's right. We are checking in here on August 14th, 2022. This is the latest edition of the Boxing Source Radio Show. I am your host, James Bell, the leader of the Boxing Source. You can catch us on social media through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, of course, the YouTube channel. And we will have this particular podcast. Of course, it's available on multiple platforms: iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music. It's available on a bunch of those things. Of course, if you're you know not able to catch the live podcast in its entirety, then you can check it, of course, on those streaming platforms. But we have a few things that we're going to be talking about in this particular podcast. We want to, take a look back at what happened with Teofimo Lopez as he fought Pedro Campa over in Resorts World, Las Vegas. So we're going to be, taking a, look at that. We're going to be reviewing that. Also, we're going to look ahead to the unified heavyweight championship bout, the rematch between Alexander Usyk and Anthony Joshua. And we will also, take a look into the fight card with Adrian Broner and Omar Figueroa Jr., as that is going to be held over in the Hard Rock or Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino over in Hollywood, Florida. So we're going to be taking a look at that in pretty much in detail. All right, cool. So we want to get into what went down over in the Resorts World, Las Vegas. Was pretty much outside of the Resorts World. Pretty much was like an outdoor type of arena in Resorts World with Teofimo Lopez versus Pedro Campa. Of course, Teofimo Lopez, still former unified lightweight champion. That's right, the former unified lightweight champion. Folks, we got to get it right. Unified, not undisputed. Unified, not undisputed. And yes, I will continue to mention that. Anyone that has an issue with that could take it up with the World Boxing Council. Okay. Now, with that being said, Teofimo Lopez, getting back in the ring, after his loss to George Kambosos Jr. last year, and he had a couple of things that went down, in between these two fights, against George Kambosos Jr. and then against Pedro Campa. A number of it was, kind of like personal, outside of the ring, not inside the ring. People kind of like know about those things that Teofimo Lopez is dealing with. But for him to, get back in the ring, he was getting back in the ring at 140 pounds with this super lightweight division against Pedro Campa. And this, particular bout for him was something that, I guess was pretty much a little bit of a showcase fight of sorts for him to kind of like say, okay, first, am I, completely back? Am I cleared of everything that has went down, over the course of those, about 8 or 9 months in between the loss of George Kambosos Jr. to this particular bout. One of the things that was a concern to some leading into this bout was that in the camp, he didn't necessarily have that much of a time for sparring. So that was a concern to some. But looked like in this particular bout, really didn't matter much. Pedro Campa, even though Pedro Campa came in with a record of 34 wins, 1 loss, and 1 draw, he wasn't really that much of a match for Teofimo Lopez in this particular instance. Teofimo Lopez was able to move in and out of the pocket, was much faster with his hands, was able to throw, multiple combinations over the course of the fight. And eventually was able to score a knockdown with a right hand, followed with the left to send Pedro Campa back and down to the canvas. But then, in the seventh round, it was a series of punches to Pedro Campa that forced referee Tony Weeks to stop the bout in the seventh round. And so Teofimo Lopez gets on the winning column once again. His new record is 17 wins with just that one loss. And there are a few things that some people could say about this particular bout. At least for me, in one instance, that Teofimo Lopez feels like he is comfortable being at that super lightweight division. Of course, there was the mention of him immediately after his fight against Vasyl Lomachenko that he was having issues making 135 pounds. So I guess that was something that was a concern of sorts for his bout against George Kambosos Jr. But now he doesn't necessarily have to worry about getting down to 135 pounds. He feels like he's comfortable, there at super lightweight. There were instances where he had those flashy moments, so to speak, against Pedro Campa, able to land flush on Pedro Campa on a few occasions. But initially here with Pedro Campa, Campa was able to take a number of those shots without being visibly stunned. And it took until, I guess, the fifth or sixth round for Pedro Campa to really kind of like show effects of the punches that Teofimo Lopez was throwing. So, I'd say we got to see what happens, later on down the line here with Teofimo Lopez. Of course, Lopez had a lot to say immediately after the fight, talking about, there's these guys here at 140 pounds. You have, of course, the former, yes, I did say former, undisputed champion at 140 pounds there in Josh Taylor. You also have former world champion in Regis Prograis, who is, set to go into a bout for what is now the vacant WBC title at 140 pounds. So you do have a significant bout there with that WBC with Jose Zepeda and Regis Prograis. You also have a fighter that was a former WBC champion that could have faced Jose Zepeda in Jose Carlos Ramirez. That's also there at 140 pounds. And also there was a lightweight that was mentioned by the name of Ryan Garcia. Ryan Garcia did have his last fight above 135 pounds. But I kind of like feel like maybe Ryan Garcia could still do something or have fights at 135. But we know what the priority is for Ryan Garcia at this point. But it remains to be seen if that particular fight can take place. So, my thing is with Teofimo Lopez, he did also say on the mic that, I'm going to be back on Heisman night, and I'm fighting again on Heisman night. And few reporters or websites have penciled in that Teofimo Lopez is fighting next on December 10th. That is when the Heisman Trophy presentation is scheduled to take place, is December 10th. And they usually book Madison Square Garden for that particular Saturday. So we'll see how that goes there for Teofimo Lopez. If he's, like I said, solidified there on December 10th in Madison Square Garden, and depending on who he faces. I feel like there is another fighter out there that is a very, very good contender in Arnold Barboza Jr. that is currently undefeated at 27-0. That could be the guy that faces Teofimo Lopez at that particular date. So for me, I think that is the fight that would be very good for Teofimo Lopez there at 140 pounds. To see where he's at as far as like a bona fide contender at 140 pounds. Yes, you still have more things to sort out with Josh Taylor. They're saying like, hey, maybe the thing with him relinquishing the IBF title is official because they had ordered Josh Taylor to face Jeremiah Ponce, who is the top contender there in the IBF. But it was like announced through Joe Tessitore on ESPN, on the ESPN telecast, that Josh Taylor is looking to face Jack Catterall once again for the titles that he'll end up keeping. So the thing is like, hey, we got a few things going down when it comes to the 140-pound division. I did kind of like see a couple of things there in this bout with Teofimo Lopez and Pedro Campa. And one of the things was that you did see a number of supporters there for Teofimo Lopez. You did, hear the chants early, T-E-O, T-E-O, T-E-O. That, kind of like, I guess it kind of like boosted him up a little bit. He does still have his father there as, his head trainer. In a number of conversations that I've, been part of after the fight, they really don't feel like Teofimo Lopez Sr. should remain as his head trainer. I feel like it's a different type of relationship, like in comparison to like a Jack Mosley to Shane Mosley, Angel Garcia to, a Denny Garcia, Kenny Porter to a Sean Porter, so on and so forth. Or with Lomachenko as well. Of course, we had a thing there with those in the past too, like Mosley and of course with Mayweather at one particular point. So I think that maybe Teofimo Lopez has reached his limit with his dad, maybe, and that he could probably do more things or be able to use more of his talents while under another trainer. That is one thing that was kind of like a topic of sorts after this fight that Teofimo Lopez had, here with Pedro Campa. So, I feel like, hey, yeah, he can do a few things at the 140-pound division, but, it remains to be seen how he deals with guys that may not necessarily be right there in front of him like Pedro Campa was, or, somebody that has a little bit of pop behind their punch. Because, even though, Teofimo Lopez had his little moments where he was bobbing in and out, trying to, shoulder roll and things like that, he was still getting caught by Pedro Campa. And Pedro Campa, is not, as someone like sharp as a Josh Taylor, on his A game, Regis Prograis, or, someone that's, patient like a Jose Carlos Ramirez. Like, how would he react to, some fighter like that, who would be more patient, who would have better defense, be able to counter much better than Pedro Campa does. That is something that remains to be seen. Also, I think that Arnold Barboza is a fairly solid fighter. Like I said, he's undefeated, 27-0, I think it was. Like, he would be a really, really good test for Teofimo Lopez. If that ends up being the fight, for Heisman night over at Madison Square Garden there. But one other thing that I want to be on the lookout for. Yes, this was a main event. Um, here for Teofimo Lopez to be featured on the top ranked card. Of course, it wasn't very large venue. Yeah, it was sold out, but it was like what 3,600 capacity for that venue. So Madison Square Garden, if it's like the actual garden or whatever it is, I don't know. Yeah, I mean they're saying they're scheduled for Madison Square Garden December 10th. To see if Teofimo Lopez is going to be in that particular event. But like I said, it remains to be seen if he's going to be the headliner. And if he is the headliner, what would make it big enough for them to use the large arena there? So I would like to know how that would be able to sort itself out. You also had in the co-featured bout Xander Zayas going up against Elias Espadas, and Elias Espadas came in there with 22 wins and 4 losses, and Xander Zayas, of course, is one of the high rising prospects there, 13-0 coming into this bout. He was originally scheduled to be part of a card a couple months earlier. But ended up being ill to the point where he was not able to make that particular card. And of course that was notable because of him being on video, kind of like saying that he wouldn't be able to make it. He was like crying and all that type of stuff. He was supposed to be part of the whole Puerto Rican Day week or Puerto Rican Day weekend. There, what was it, over in Madison Square Garden. Of course, she had the Puerto Rican Day Parade the following day. Supposed to have Xander Zayas there, alongside, the chosen one, Edgar Berlanga. But Xander Zayas wasn't able to be on there, and Edgar Berlanga, I guess, had a performance that was disappointing to a number of fans that was watching. But now, he was able to, get back in the ring there against Elias Espadas, and he, looked very, very sharp on offense there for the short amount of time that he was, in the ring there. Espadas did taste the canvas in the first round, from a good punch there from Xander Zayas. But it was more about him being more patient on offense, seeing what was open, working the body early. But when he was working the body early, he was kind of going a little bit low there, and he was getting warned multiple times by Russell Moore in that particular instance. So he got to the point where it was like, hey, one more time, and I'm taking 1 point. And so what ended up happening was he kind of like switched his offense up, was going upstairs a lot more, throwing jabs and throwing hooks, and not really, trying to go to the inside unless if he was like very close in that, we really didn't have, much other way to, get his offense off than to go to the body. But he was still, able to, break down Elias Espadas and, get it knocked down there in round 5. And Russell Moore ended up, after the knockdown, didn't really give a count. He just talked about it. He just said, man, this is enough, man. I don't want to be here any longer, man. Let's just end this fight. So Russell Moore stopped the bout in the 5th round. So you had Xander Zayas celebrating there for that victory. He really wanted to kind of like showcase his skills there, after not making it in there in June. So for him, this was, his second win of the year. he did say after the bout that he does want to work on his defense a little bit more because he was getting caught a number of times there by Espadas, not keeping his hands up after using his offense. He's not like going in and then coming back and having his hand up. He's throwing the left jab, not having his hand up while he throws the right. So for me, I think that Zayas is one of the more talented young fighters out there. He is there at the 154-pound division, 19 years old. And they're kind of bringing him along pretty well, and hopefully they don't kind of like jump the gun in a sense with them. That with him, like I said, he was going to be part of that fight card in Madison Square Garden, where he would have been there with Edgar Berlanga. And, with Edgar Berlanga had those string of first round knockout victories. And then all of a sudden he gets matched up with a couple of guys that have, a lot more experience that, either are coming to win or they're coming not to be taken out early. And so, with that being said, you have to be able to do other things in order to set up shots to knock those guys down or knock them out or stop them. And Edgar Berlanga, I guess at that particular time, wasn't able to develop that. So now we see that he's not really, I guess, really that much in demand or something like that. It remains to be seen, how he's going to be received for his next bout when his next bout comes up. For me, with Xander Zayas, we might, get a little bit of a different reception there. I think a few people that were in attendance for this fight card and that seen Xander Zayas in there, felt like he was a very, very good fighter there in the ring. And, I was able to see him over in State Farm Arena when he faced Dan Carpensy, and he was able to, slowly but methodically, beat Carpensy in 4 rounds in that particular matchup. And, I feel like as long as they're able to develop him as a, young fighter, 19 years old, not really, rushing things, he should be fine. They don't really have to jump him into no real big or, tough fights at 154 pounds. He's there at 19 years old, so he could eventually be there at 160 pounds. He's going to grow out of that frame to be there at 154. So you could put him in there for a few more fights at 154. He does want to have that quote unquote get back next year for Puerto Rican Day weekend. He also, wants to have a fight over in Puerto Rico. So we're going to see how that's going to, turn out for him. I think that, as long as they match him up well with Carl Moretti or, Todd DeBow or, whoever else works with the matchmaking at top rank, kind of like matches him up well, he could, build himself up to be a fairly popular guy. Of course, they were talking about on ESPN, okay, who's the next guy going to be that's a Puerto Rican superstar? They thought it would have been Edgar Berlanga. But the way that, he ended up having those matches, those last couple matches, he's not being received pretty well there in that case. So we got to see what happens here with Xander Zayas. Have the guests jumping in here, checking in from the Tampa Bay area. This is Brother Terrell in the building. What's going on, man?
Hey, what's up, JR? Just want to jump in for a little while when I'm feeling good. This won't last too long, but we'll see how long it lasts.
Word, no doubt. And I was talking about this thing here with the ESPN card, of course, headlined by Teofimo Lopez and Pedro Campa, and then also talking about the thing here with Xander Zayas, having this win over Elias Espadas. So what did you think about the card in general?
Well, I mean, it's just funny. It's just always good to get boxing back, right? It seems like a long time. I mean, we talk about boxing every day, whether it be on here or boxing Twitter, something like that, things like that. But it's always just good to have boxing on TV or just having a good weekend lined up. Even like next weekend, I'm looking so forward to next weekend because there's so many events that will just shape boxing for the year and things like that. But back to this weekend. It was a great card, and I definitely enjoyed seeing Mr. Xander. This guy is full of action. I mean, the only thing I can take away from him, he will need to shore up his defense as he moves up in competition. That's the
Right.
only. I mean, but this guy, he's a great prospect at this point.
Mm-hmm.
All action, all action. I mean, he definitely has to make himself of what could be the next Puerto Rican star, and that's something that's always been a statement in boxing. Back to Cotto, back to so many others that have helped from Puerto Rico and raised that flag, things like that. So it's always good to have that. Because even with the Puerto Rican star, something that we've always had with that, the Puerto Rican Mexican rivalry. So in order to do that, you got to be great. So this guy is definitely a great prospect, and he's definitely on his way as long as he can just continue to improve. And it's kind of funny. I heard you say Berlanga prior to me jumping in, and that's someone that they kind of tapped to be the next Puerto Rican star, but that's likely not the case with him at this point. Just kind of exposed to be kind of, in a sense, one-dimensional, and just in a sense with his level of competition, his knockouts definitely hadn't followed up with him as his level of competitions go up. But with Xander, he fought a good, solid guy. I think the guy was 27-0 or 27-1 or whatever the guy was. So the guy had a good record, a solid record. So he won no walkover, win no Dominican. But for Xander, he definitely just faded a lot. But even towards that fight, why the ref stopped that fight like that, I have no idea. I mean, we already know what was probably going to happen eventually.
Yeah.
But there was no reason for the ref to stop that fight. Not at all.
Yeah, I mean, before I was saying, like, once they had that knockdown, they're in the fifth round, Russell Murray was like, man, I'm out of here, man. I don't need to be here any longer. You ain't gonna win. He almost looked at him like he ain't gonna win. He's like, bro, you ain't gonna win, man. So it's like, hey, I don't know what to say on that, man. That was kind of crazy there on that instance, man. So for me, I kind of like think that this is something for Xander to like kind of like develop himself, so to speak, to like kind of like develop himself as like a up and coming fighter, and like he was saying after the fight, he did say that he wanted to work on his defense. If he becomes more active in the ring, maybe he could develop that. I've been in conversations where it's like, the more active that these fighters can be, the better that they could develop their skills. And it seems like these days you don't necessarily see these guys that are young, that have, these records of like 13-0, 8-0, 5-0, 3-0, that build themselves up, with more and more fights over the course of the year, because it's almost like they're having to push to put themselves on TV. So if they're getting these TV spots, yeah, they're gonna get paid by appearing on TV, but you're only gonna be able to fit yourself in the slots where they have these TV dates open. So yeah, you're getting there on TV, but you're only getting about 2 or 3 fights a year, and you've only just started the game pretty much like 1 or 2 years, a pro game 1 or 2 years. So that's pretty tough on that. Thinking, we got like a new guest on here, jumping in the live conversation. Brother Frank here. So it's Boxing with Frank Bay, I think it is, jumping on here with the Boxing Source. What's going on?
Hey, what's up, Source? Nothing. Just listening to you chat and about Xander.
Yeah. I mean, I'm talking about, Xander Zayas is being, one of those young guys that they have out there in Top Rank.
Uh-huh.
They had a good number of guys that were featured on this particular card that, are young guys there under the Top Rank banner, that they talk about. You have someone like a Xander Zayas, you have someone like a Troy Isley, who I also saw over in Atlanta last year. You had Duke Reagan that had a notable fight there against D'Angelo Fuentes. And you talk about, of course, the brothers there, Keyshawn and Kyron Davis, or who they have there.
Right.
That they try to develop, but it's like, hey, you're getting these guys and they're 1-0, 2-0, 3-0, but they're on the Zone or they're on ESPN or something like that. And I'm like, wait a minute,
well, did you see that guy Regan who was on the undercard?
I missed that. And that's the thing that I wanted to see, because, they said Reagan was really, really, struggling in a good number of those rounds, man.
Mm-hmm. He definitely had a fight on his hands.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the only reason I mention him is just that's how you can distinguish if we're talking about Xander as a prospect, because Regan's a prospect too. So does Xander give you more answers than questions when you're analyzing a prospect?
Right. And the way, I had to look into his opponents a little bit more, but the records that they have are fairly good, but it's like, hey, he's still able to, do his thing against those guys. And the other thing with like having these young prospects on TV slots is that you can't necessarily have them there against guys that are like 5-12 or 2-8 or something like that. That's usually how they match up these fighters that are having their professional debuts or they're a 1-0, 2-0.
Okay, well,
they have them against guys that
Well, let me ask you this then. Mm-hmm. So let's do a comparison between Schofield and Xander, because they would kind of be almost at the same level. Well, Schofield's a little behind, but Schofield was a prospect. So when you watched him, did he give you more answers than questions?
Yeah, and the thing is that you kind of like see with Schofield, at least for me, like I'm not seeing Schofield being featured out there anywhere near as much as Xander Zayas is, but it's more of like what would it take to like kind of like develop the fighters along the way, how that's going to work. Before I go on more about that, I wanted to add in another guest here that did have a comment about Xander Zayas in a potential future fight, but it's my guy here, YSM Sports Media, checking in. What's going on, man?
Hey, what's good?
All good, bro. All good. Just chatting it up with Xander Zayas, man. What you got on him?
All right, well, two things. Like, first, we mentioned of Floyd Schofield. Floyd Schofield didn't sign on to Oscar till this fight. Floyd Schofield had been moved by Rick Ross. So you saw him on a lot of club shows, ballroom boxing.
Ballroom boxing type things, yeah.
So it's plenty of prospects that started off in the Chitlin circuit. And, for Mexicans, they got the Mexican circuit. For black fighters, they got the Chitlin circuit down south.
Yeah.
When you fighting guys, that's like 2-7, 2-8. And that's where you're making your bones, where you're trying to get different styles. Whereas though Xander's already been dubbed. Like Xander doesn't have an exceptional amateur background. Like he never was an open class amateur. But because Puerto Rico is so starved for a star, then that means you gotta like put the gas by him. You gotta put him out there, put him on TV. Let Puerto Rico know that you have a talented prospect coming up soon. So there's a difference to being good and being marketed. And I feel like fans sometimes get that misconstrued that the prospect you're always hearing about isn't always the best prospect. It's just the one that they think they could sell.
Yeah, they can sell they can put it in front of you.
Xander, I'll say it again. When the time comes, I got Xander stopping Virgil. Xander's the goods. Like he got some defensive things that he got to get right, but he's 19.
Mm-hmm.
As far as ability, the first thing I look for is footwork. Can you make the guy miss? Because We've seen tons of guys just walk forward. Oh, I'm bigger than you. I'm just going to overwhelm you with power and size. Nah, I saw him last night. He made the guy miss. Is he thinking with his shots that he's knocking guys out with or knocking them down with? I saw, the little subtle adjustments to get the guy out of there. So power, size, somewhat of elusiveness, thinking. That's all I need to see.
Hey,
and overall development over time.
Hey guys, I have a quick question for you. There's a fighter that's been fighting on ESPN for the last couple of years, young white kid, right? Pretty much fresh out of high school. He was on ESPN for like a good 4 or 5 fights. And obviously they were trying to push him, right? And he had a fight against a black guy last year where he lost, right? And
he wasn't on ESPN. That was Vito Melnicki, right?
Yep, there you go.
Yeah, it was like Vito Melnicki versus James Martin. That was bad matchmaking.
Yeah, because that kind of goes in the sense of what you're talking. Mm-hmm. You are prospect, trying to push him. How many fights does he get? How often will you see him? Things like that. And like I said, you can't put him on TV fighting against a guy with a 2-10 record. You can't do that. No one wants to see that. But when they put him in against that guy, I forgot that guy's record, but it was a decent record. And what happened? He lost.
No,
I think it was like 7-6 though, or something.
That was horrible matchmaking because Corey's better than Vito. Corey's a Philadelphia fighter who actually fought Xander right before then, but that was in the bubble. And in the bubble, it was one of the guys that Xander couldn't stop. Xander beat him, but in the bubble, 2 weeks to take the fight. Just everything's thrown off. Philadelphia gym's not open, so they're doing it in the garage. But Vito, he fucked like his management. That was because he beat the shit out of Vito.
Oh yeah. Actually, man, it wasn't like he was 7-6. He was like 8-2 or whatever it was, before that. And the thing about it is that they took that fight a couple months after, he fought Xander Zayas. So he'd been in the gym, with the training for the Zayas fight. But then, he went through those, rounds. And like you said, I mean, that was a full 6 rounds. And then they put him right back in there against Vito Melnicki. He's right back in the gym. He gonna be fresh. So it's like, how you gonna, match him up with, something like that. And like, that was a bad style matchup with that one. But that kind of like goes into, what we're saying about matching up these guys with certain opponents and either putting them on TV or not putting them on TV. One guy that, I've had interviews with here in the DC area, and is young prospect here is, Jalil Major Hackett. And his thing is he had his debut part of that, Floyd Mayweather card, but that was like, off TV or whatever it was. Then his next bout was against somebody that was, 2-10, over in a local card, Beltway Battles in Washington, D.C. And the other fights that he's had, they're part of big cards or whatever it is. They were part of the cards for Gervonta Tank Davis, but they were off TV. So you weren't going to see him on TV, but, you're still, part of the big events or things or something like that. So if he, kind of like gains a little bit of a following, they do that off TV until they feel like he's ready to be on TV,
Jay, speaking of that, this is a problem. Vito, Xander, Jalil, they're all young turning pro. You have to be careful with putting these 18 and 19-year-old kids against men. Now, they men with bad records or, a couple of losses, but they're still men.
Yeah.
And you gotta really, really match those kids carefully within their first 18, 19, 20, 21.
Yeah.
You gotta be careful.
I mean, they haven't really developed their, strength or anything like that. They haven't like completely honed their skills as a professional in comparison to an amateur. Because of course, amateur, you're, just in there trying to score points, volume, precision, volume, instead of like working on things for power, movement, shifting defense, that type of thing. headgear, no headgear. You know what I mean? So it's something that like have that when you're 17 or 18 or 19, having those particular fights and putting them in the spotlight or against guys that are much older than them. Like one fighter that I talk about or that has been talked about that developed himself while being very young as a professional is now the undisputed lightweight champion, Devin Haney. Like he went over there to Mexico, while he was 15, 16 years old and had all those fights in Mexico to develop his skills as a pro. So once he started to, get up in experience and things like that or whatever it is, and he was able to handle that. Just like, going up against George Kambosos in Australia, he was able to handle that, no problem, because he had already had all those years, developing himself as a young professional fighter to get to this particular point.
Yo, it's interesting that you bring that up because you hear criticism of certain guys. Because when fans don't understand the business of boxing, you'll be like, oh, this guy got 30 fights. How you don't got a world title yet? Or how isn't he this yet or that yet? You have to understand that there's two different roads to go on. You could sign your life away early, where you're giving up 33% to either a manager and a promotion, maybe even both. Or you can, like you said, take the Mexico route. That's why you see guys like Canelo Alvarez, guys like Jaime Munguia, guys like Zerto with a lot of fights, 40-plus fights before they 23, 24 years old. It's because they went the Mexico route. Then you got guys like Boots, guys like Wilder that have a lot of fights before they even won a world title. What, 30-plus fights, right?
Yeah, around range like 21 to 22 to 23 fights. But they going in that, like you said, the Chitlin circuit.
The Chitlin circuit. So
in the South, or maybe like 2,300. Or maybe they had like some in the Armory, or like I said, with Major Hackett, Jalil Major Hackett, they'll have some at the Entertainment and Sports Arena in the DC area where they could build up those type of fights. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Have him get his experience off TV. Let him iron out the kinks. Let him see, the bruiser. Let him see the southpaw, the dude with the super awkward style. And that's one of the things that Vito Melnicki didn't do. And he got cooked.
Yeah, he got straight up cooked. Man, that was horrible there. So, I mean, and going back to the thing there with with Xander Zayas, like I'll be interested to see what happens next for him. He did say that he wanted to be out there in Puerto Rico, probably before the end of the year. We'll see how that goes. One thing I did see or did notice that was pretty interesting is that Peter Khan was in his corner. I was like, yo, where'd that come from? So maybe Peter Khan could position him to, have some other fights that are, sooner rather than later. I mean, I don't know. But that's kind of like something that, I would like to see how that relationship works out, here in the near future. Now that, we got, more guests in, I wanted to, revisit the whole thing with the main event there with Teofimo Lopez and Pedro Campa, and wanted to get your thoughts on that. I'm going to start with Frank first, then YSM, and then Terrell. So, Frank, if you had any thoughts on Teofimo Lopez against Pedro Campa and his standing at the 140-pound division.
Yeah, I mean, I thought he did what he was supposed to do. I mean, was the level opponent an amazing opponent? No, but I mean, he looked good. Were there flaws? Yeah. Was Pedro did he provide resistance? Yes. So I don't think it answered a lot of questions. I think there's still a lot of question marks for him, but the performance was good.
Gotcha. Anything on it, YSM?
At 140, I'm not going to say he's food at 140, but I left with more questions than answers. And how are you going to react when your punches don't obliterate a guy? Because that's what the Teo that we're used to at 35.
Right.
You was a big 35. You didn't work your jab. Your Philly shell, you don't really know how to use it. You sat and you waited for Campa too much. Basically, all the flaws that were there before are still there. It's just that you were the big explosive guy at 35, and nobody could really capitalize on your mistakes physically. Now, are you sure he beats Jack Catterall? Josh Taylor, Montana Love, Sabril Matias, Antoine, Barbosa, who else? Zepeda, Jose Ramirez.
Pro
I
race.
can keep going.
Pro race.
I can. Program. Are you sure? Like normally when a unified champ comes up with that much hype, like you already, man, he'll beat this dude, he'll beat that dude. Look, I don't know. 140 is one of those divisions, man. I'm not sure he can beat Brandon Lee right now.
Brandon Lee is adding on to the card next weekend over at the Seminole Hard Rock and Casino in Hollywood, Florida. Just wanted to add that in real fast. Terrell, what you got on Teofimo Lopez?
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same thing. But, definitely after the fight, as I always say, excuse me, when a fighter moves up a weight, I at least get a guy a chance to grow into the weight class. So, so with that said, as much as I want to criticize for this, that, and other, let him give a chance to grow into the weight. But more importantly, his mindset, his mental mindset. Even when you look at some the pre-fight interviews, he's still going on and on about Cambosos, things like that. He wants to rematch him. And the fact that he won't let it go with that, he continues to maintain that he won that fight, things like that. Looks like his personal life is kind of like is in this disorder. I'm not sure if you guys married or not or whatever, things like that. Got his daddy posing on in front of the camera, things like that, like P. Diddy.
All up in the videos.
I just wanted to add one thing about Teo, if you don't mind. One thing I noticed though, and because the gentleman talks about the business of boxing, is that he brings a lot of eyes to the sport. I mean, YouTube was going on last night, so was Twitter. So Teo always has that going for him. As long as he stays relevant, he's going to bring a lot of eyes to the sport and a lot of attention. And he's already talking pay-per-view. Now, I'm not talking about his talent or what he offers, but he's a big name and he will provide good fights.
Now, I mean, up to a certain point, of course, in the 135-pound division, he was able to, deliver spectacular finishes to a certain extent, and the way that they had built him up, for a couple of years, before he had the first world title shot, that he kind of was a guy that was fairly spectacular to a certain extent. But when he did face, Vasyl Lomachenko, yeah, he did kind of showcase a number of his skills, but also he showcased, or you saw a number of his flaws too. And with that, we kind of seen that, maybe there were some vulnerabilities to him. And those vulnerabilities came to a head when he faced George Kambosos. And yeah, he wasn't at the top of his game for that. But, if you're someone that is of a certain ability, that even if you have some type of an off game, or you're not starting off well, that you should be able to finish off someone like a George Kambosos if you feel like George Kambosos is not that good. So, when he was able to score that knockdown against George Kambosos, was he able to finish him? No. Last round, was he able to assert himself like he asserted himself against Vasyl Lomachenko? No. So he ended up losing the bout. And that's something that you got to see here while he's here at the super lightweight division. And for me, when you're at a certain level at a division below, you have to be to a point where you're almost or at no question that you were the best fighter there at that particular division before you move up. And the thing about it is that some people had some doubts at 135, particularly with this loss to George Kambosos. So for him to move up, that was more of like a necessity to him because he just felt like, hey, it's a struggle for me to make 135. But yeah, it's a struggle to make 135. But now that you're going up to 140, you're pretty much fresh at 140 against guys that have been there at 140 pounds for a good amount of time that are used to getting down to 140 while you're just starting to like come down to 140. Yeah, it might be less of a hassle for you, but you're going against guys with much more experience of getting down to that weight class. Before I go more into that, wanted to add in another guest into here. The Boxing Academic is in the building. What's going on?
Hey, what's going on, fellas? I'm driving, so let me know if my audio doesn't sound good.
Hey man, if you're in the ATL, as long as you don't have T-Mobile, you should be good. But you do have one.
Yeah, actually, T-Mobile ain't too bad in Atlanta for me. When I had it, I don't have it anymore. But yeah, I switched sides.
What you got?
So you guys were talking about the main event, right?
Yeah.
Teofimo is definitely a talented fighter, and no one can take that away from him. But people, when they say there are levels, that they say that for a reason. And so when I say levels, when he is leading and he's a front runner and he's against someone that he's supposed to beat, and he beats him to the punch, he's faster than him. Yes, everything is going to happen how he wants it to happen, and he can get away with a lot of things, not setting up his shots. Mostly they're not setting up his shots because he liked to do the swinging, kind of like bolo punches, and I don't really see him setting up stuff with his jabs and sort of using the jab as defense to get out the way and just things like that. So when he fights a fighter that he ain't supposed to beat or could potentially give him some resistance, how will he fare? How will he do when he has to do something more than just bulldoze a guy or just use his athleticism? How will he do? Like, will he use craft? Will he use a jab? Will the jab, set up the right hand? And, like the shot against Comey was a great shot, but it's Richard Comey. It wasn't like Richard Comey better than Ndongo, but, he's a C+ fighter. So landing that big shot on him, that's great. But what happened to that shot on the guy who beat him, the Aussie, Kambosos? I don't know if he's from Australia, but it's Kambosos. What happened to that shot on Kambosos? What happens when you face resistance? How will you respond? Because you haven't had to work on the things that will bode well for you and give you an advantage, even when you're facing guys that you can beat.
Yeah, that's the thing about it is that, like you were saying at Boxing Academic, the thing with Teofimo Lopez is that he kind of like fell into the trap of like being a front runner to a certain extent with the majority of the fights that he's had. And, I was bringing up the whole thing with Vasyl Lomachenko. Yeah, Vasyl Lomachenko, we did have a good start against Vasyl Lomachenko, but then Lomachenko in the middle rounds kind of like made the adjustments, and you've seen that Teofimo Lopez was like stuck thinking a little bit. It wasn't, as assertive. It didn't take until the last couple of rounds where he kind of like changed it up, was assertive, and just stepped it up to where he almost, I say he almost knocked down Vasyl Lomachenko and almost could have taken out Vasyl Lomachenko in that particular fight. But with that kind of like was his pinnacle, because it was like, him and his father's trainer there, Teofimo Lopez Sr., They were all talking about, oh, we're going to do this. We're going to go ahead and we're going to fight Lomachenko. We're going to beat Lomachenko. And then we're going to be the guy that, takes out the Matrix and everything like that. And then once that happened, that was pretty much, the peak for him to a certain extent. So it's like, okay, I did what I said to do. What, they didn't think about, okay, what's next? Shoot, I already did what I wanted to do. Like, I don't care about, it almost seemed like he said, I don't care about anybody else. I just want to beat Lomachenko. So when you have that type of mindset, you don't have that same type of hunger anymore. So you're going up against a guy like a George Kambosos, and you feel like, hey, this is George Kambosos, man. Who is this guy? It's George Kambosos. And to a certain extent, a number of people thought, hey, this is George Kambosos. Who is this guy? But George Kambosos said, hey, look, I'm coming in there, and I have full confidence that I feel like I can beat you. And when you have somebody like that, you kind of like are, lollygagging around, BSing and all that, you set yourself up for a trap. And what happened in the first round? He got caught, and he had to do catch up ever since then. And he really couldn't really do that because he was just headhunting the whole time, thinking that he was just talented enough with the talent that he had would be enough for him to beat George Kambosos. Not enough.
Well, kind of just speaking to that, what you're talking about right there. So, like I said, we know that Teo beat Richard Comey. They moved on and beat Loma at that point. And at that point, even then, after that fight, there was a little bit of talk to him moving up to 140. And the thing about it, so that next fight he fought Kambosos, the mandatory. And boom, we already know what happened with that fight. And at that point, that effectively canceled all the momentum of him moving up to 140 and having a big splash at that point. He got hospitalized. Then just once again, just the fact that the denial of him actually losing to Kambosos, things like that, went back and forth. We finally see him here at 140. And typically when we see a unified champion move up to a different weight class, there's a big splash. Now, once again, Teo got the TKO last night. We know that. Was he impressive? No, he wasn't. And did he have that momentum? No, not at all. And kind of what the Tim Bradley and Andre Ward were talking about, it's kind of rare when you have a fighter that's already made a big that already established stuff at 135 or whatever weight class, and then move up, and they have to pretty much start his takeover once over again, because that momentum that he had, he lost that. So my big concern for him at 140 is mental, because like I said, what happens when this guy to be in there with better fighters, he brings that same power and they don't move? What does he do then? Because he still has the same boxing skills, which is mid-level at this point. He doesn't jab like we already talked about. So what does he do then? Rely on that big right hand or something like that. But what happens when they don't move? They don't fall down. So so my main thing for him going to 140 is more mental at this point. So need to be able to hold that together and be able to box those men around, things like that. Because I said, these guys 140, they've been there. They've already been there. These guys probably walk around at 150, 160, something like that, right? Whereas Teo is learning to get more acclimated to that weight, things like that. So for me, like this, for him, that success is more mental than everything, and he needs to humble himself down, in my opinion.
Now, this was one thing that we were talking about earlier when we brought up Xander Zayas, is that he has those amount of fights in there, kind of like bring them along fairly slowly, right? Teofimo Lopez pretty much has like 19 professional fights, and like I said, he had been featured on those Heisman nights, for a couple of times, before he had that vacant IBF or the IBF title fight, that he had. And then after that, it was, Vasyl Lomachenko. So I'm like, here you are. It's like 16, 17 fights in, and you're fighting Vasyl Lomachenko as a professional. So you didn't necessarily have the time to really develop or hone all of your skills as a professional because you didn't build up those, those fights along the way. You had about about 8 or 9 fights, or maybe 8 or 9 fights, and then you're on TV then, So it's like, I mean, maybe that's kind of like why he got caught against someone like George Kambosos, because he didn't have those fights to like build himself up to hone those skills. Hey Frank, you can jump on here real quick.
Oh yeah, no, I listen. And that's something I look at is like the amount of fights. I'm not, you know what? I try to take different takes, and I'm not a person who wants to burn the house down, because a guy loses. People lose. It's boxing. And I'm always going to give somebody that's been a champion like Teo the benefit of the doubt. It's just people want to trash his career already, and it's like he's young. He's had fights. Who was the last guy that lost like that young? There was a guy named David Reed. He fought with 14 fights coming in. He lost and he could never come back. But he had reached once you reach a certain pinnacle. Like Teo, once you're a champion, you're expected to fight champions. There's no more kind of working your way back. You're just gonna be thrown. You're gonna be thrown right in there, and you're going against world class. Like yes, as limited as Campa was, he was still world class. So I just hate trying to throw the baby with the bathwater.
Yep, but I mean that kind of like goes into one particular fighter that I will be talking about in detail later, and that is Anthony Olufemi Joshua, who pretty much has around that same type of amount of fights. But before I go into that a little bit more, wanted to add in another guest here. Thankful for him to jump on in here. His brother Clever in the building. What's going on, man?
What's going on, Jay? What's going on, gentlemen? How y'all doing this week?
Doing great, man. Doing great. Thankful for you to come on here on this particular podcast, man.
So, Source, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, guys. But look at a guy like Isaac Cruz or Jojo Diaz. They're getting shots and they lost. Why are people so okay with that? Oh, well, Isaac Cruz, let's throw him in with this guy. But with Teo, we're ready to trash him. It makes no sense to me.
Good question.
Can I rebuttal something? So Isaac Cruz has a certain style that we know Isaac comes for. He's going to throw a bunch of shots. He's going to throw hooks, and it is generally effective against a lot of styles. The one style that it like the Matador style could probably tame that style very well. But Isaac Cruz has like a warrior's will. He's pressuring. He's always like never stopping. So with the Tank fight, he never stopped trying to win. He didn't win, but he never stopped trying to win. With Teo, for me, I'm not saying that he won't, get another title, but I'm saying that the tendencies that I see from him are tendencies that when he faces resistance, like even in the Lomachenko fight, yes, he started off very well, but then toward the end of that fight, who was winning? Like he won the fight nevertheless because he had banked so many rounds, but he did not have the momentum in that fight. He lost his mental edge, and it looked like he was just trying to just wait to the bell, survive in the sixes, get the bell out. And so there are a few things to me that would make me question his mental fortitude in a sense. So
I mean,
that's how
yeah, I know, but I got another. Ramirez and Proges. Okay. Ramirez was top of the game, got beat by Taylor. He's already getting another shot, and people didn't trash him the way they're trashing Teo. And Teo has far more ability. It's like we're so quick to just trash these world-class top of the cream of the crop. Taylor has a bad night. Oh, we're ready. He's not. He's done. It's like, why are we so quick to just throw these guys to the side when they're obviously extremely talented?
I mean, they're extremely talented, but in that case with Josh Taylor, man, he got cooked. All right, Clever, you could get back on here again. I think you got something that yo, if I wasn't on this joint live, I probably would have been on that stuff myself, yo.
I'll send you a care package. Care package here.
Oh, that's what's up. Hey, I'm with it. I'm with it. I'm
Yes,
with
sir.
it.
Yeah, I got you. It sounds like we're recapping last night, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Word. You know, I was on a brother's channel a little bit early, and we're talking about it, so I guess I'll regurgitate that as well. I saw some things I liked, and then I saw some things I didn't like. Don't get it twisted, man. Young Teofimo can fight, man. I've always said that about him and his natural ability. He carries power, and his athleticism allows him to do what we see of his young career thus far. However, I've never been high on him. You know, when we always talk Four Kings, I always kind of ranked him lastly because I just I see his flaws, and I see when he's compared to those guys, or even even guys above him, or just mythical matchups. You know, it's gonna be really tough for him to win. And one that I saw last night, his defense, I do not like the Philly shell. I feel like that's brand new. I may have seen him maybe do that one other time. And frankly, if you're not doing that early on and being taught by that, you know, early on in your career, then it's a no-go. You can't just up and do that. So I didn't like that. And then as far as his, like, you know, what he's good at with his power punch placement, he needs to set that up with the jab, man. And then he's fighting with his hands down. You know, you go up against, you know, hell, I'll throw Ryan Garcia. Dude, that guy will knock you out, man. That guy will knock you out like clean, you know, with your hands being down like that. And then he was holding a lot too from the get-go. And, you know, people can say what they want. Compa sucks, man. I did some research on him last night. Sucks. Absolutely sucks. I almost want to say that 67 should be the other way around, 76 or even 86. He was the perfect, you know, it was a ESPN product right there talking about Teo, a guy who's fighting what they set up for him.
Mm-hmm.
But with that being said, he does have skills to fight the best in the elite. I just, you know, with those flaws that I see, no, man. You know, had that been Josh Taylor last night, Josh Taylor would be another guy to knock you out. Like, knock you out.
Clean out.
So, you know, you guys go, my dogs. And I'll tell you.
Yeah, it's yeah, that's something, man. I mean, you talk about the thing there with Pedro Campa, you know, like I said, I mean, he had that lofty record of 34 wins, but you know, when you have the majority of those wins being in Mexico, pretty much like your whole career, you're fighting in Mexico. You only had like one or two fights outside of Mexico, you know, up to this particular point of fighting Teofimo Lopez. Then that kind of goes to show like what your level of competition is in comparison to a Teofimo Lopez. So I mean, yeah, you.
And then one more thing, Jay, like, you know, gosh, you know, it's clearly like when we hear him talk, you know, when he does interviews or even that small post that he did yesterday after he won, it's clearly obvious that he's still, you know, not over what he's over in the past, and he's struggling with that. You know, that's a hard watch. And then whatever relationship he's got going on with his father, that's their business. But I feel like he'll be more successful when he leaves him and gets with a guy who wants to coach him up rather than kind of be what his dad is doing. I don't even know what to call that anymore. It's just selfish, really. But you know, he'll be better after that because, like I said, to start this off, the dude can fight, man. I know he can fight. I'm watching him. But this is a what have you done for me lately and who have you done that against lately type of business, you know, and only select few get chosen to get propped up. And then someone was saying something earlier that I also mentioned earlier on that other channel. You see, he is already in that kind of stardom mode. He's in a bad position where he's a one-time champion, then he's a unified champion. So he does, in that way, get a leeway to be mixing with the other champions and whatnot, and how that kind of is judged. So I'm sure this entire panel, we expect him to fight other champions. Barbosa was, you know, licking at his chumps, man. He want that dude so bad that he's not going to get him, right? He's not going to get him. They're not going to feed him to him because Barbosa will beat him. I really believe. I know Teo can beat him, but Barbosa will beat him right now with those deficiencies that I just mentioned. So that's what I think about Teo, man. as far as his future, we shall see. Man, he was talking, right? He was talking a lot of stuff. He was talking so much stuff that like I just stopped listening and went on and did what I need to do. But yeah, I'll let you gentlemen have at it.
Now, the thing with Barbosa, I said immediately after the fight, with Teofimo Lopez talking about, hey, you want to fight again on Heisman night. That's, like I said.
Is that true, Jay? Like, or like, just when I say true, being talked about or even been talked, was that previously spoken?
It's been talked about. It's been penciled in by a few publications or whatever it is. It's a primetime spot. It's something that, of course, he kind of like built his popularity from. So having that slot is a prime slot. And I said, hey, maybe he could potentially fight Arnold Barbosa Jr. On that date. But going into the thing here with Teofimo Lopez, for me, even with the feature that they had there with Teofimo Lopez before the fight, I really don't think he's completely cleared of what happened. Like we're talking about someone in Teofimo Lopez that has a relationship with his father, but over the course of time, he had of course his personal relationship and his dealings with the girl that he was with, and that he wanted to go full-fledged with that woman married and everything like that, and people advised him not to do it, and he went ahead and did it anyway. And then he goes through this whole thing, he gets to the top of the top, like I said, with Lomachenko. Then he ends up losing to George Kambosos. The whole thing with with this relationship with this then wife falls apart. He has a kid. Now he's a single father and everything like that. So it's a whole lot for a guy that's like, 24, 25 years old.
I think it's a case of when I've seen a lot of young prospects, the most thing, my suspicion why prospects lose, and having known some, is just burnout. You look at these guys, they're just in a sport at 8 years old and they're constantly competing. And when I work with the kid, I tell him, hey, take some time. Like, you need a break from boxing. Don't obsess over it. Your time will come. But Teo's been doing this for how long with his dad? It's just burnout.
Yeah, that could very much be it.
Hey, Frank, were you gonna say something on the other end of the TO comments?
Okay.
What was the question? I was asking because I think you came off mute, and I wanted to hear your thoughts
on Teo.
Yeah.
I'm
pretty
getting
much
an echo. Somebody's echoing.
It's probably me. But it was pretty much TO deficiencies, and you were kind of saying that don't like throw them out type of thing. And then I responded, and I thought you was gonna give me a response to that.
Yeah, I just mentioned names. You look at Carlos Ramirez, who just lost to Taylor. He's already going to get another shot. He could take a couple fights. Isaac Cruz, these guys lose and they can come back on a undercard performances. But Teo, we already want to put him up there. He's jumping right back in the mix. And I'm just saying, we can't just throw guys away because they lose. It's just such a terrible thing to do in the sport of boxing because people are going to lose.
Yeah, the thing with Jose Ramirez, like he had his undisputed title bout against Josh Taylor. He ended up losing that, and then went right back at it in March against Jose Pedraza.
And he didn't look good.
Fresno, had that decision win. So he was able to get back in the mix there. He would have been fighting for I guess for the vacant title, but he said, hey man, I got a win coming up, I got to set this thing up.
What that to me is a case of burnout. He's burnt out and he needs time to recuperate, come back, but he's not going to have the hounds in the press that Teo does. But Teo brings it upon himself, so he needs to be able to handle that. But I think he can. I like, it'd be like me saying, oh, we need to throw somebody, I'm gonna be controversial, like Rolly Romero, right? I think he'd come back and beat people. Just because he lost doesn't mean he's not going to come back and get a big fight. We will see Rolly again.
Right. Mm-hmm. Like Rolly is Like we're look at the thing with Blair the Flair, right? Blair
Right.
the Flair Cobbs, had his little undefeated streak going.
Yeah.
He was talking
Good
this stuff.
example, bro. I'm glad you said
And
that. Yeah.
and then he had his fight against Alexis Rocha. He ended up getting stopped. He was getting up and he was throwing him body shots. You know what I'm saying?
Who's better?
Yeah.
Wait, Jim, who's better? Is
back in the
Blair
game.
Cobbs better than Rolly, or is Rolly better than Blair Cobbs?
That's a hell of a fight, bro. That's a hell of a fight.
I'm trying to be funny, though. I'm just asking, like, who's better?
Ooh.
They're equal, bro. Honestly, to me.
I want to give it to Blair.
You know what? Blair works his
Blair
ass off, and I would just
147
question if Rolly does. Blair works his ass off, bro. You can't tell me he doesn't train his ass off.
Yeah.
Rolly raised his stock to me, even in the knockout loss to Gervonta Davis.
Yeah, he did everybody.
He, I think he would beat quite a few people based on
Thank you.
how he was throwing punches, the number of punches he was throwing. I don't think he would have won the fight even if it would have went longer and went to the decision, because the tide was sort of turning, but the intangibles are there. Yes, he's flawed, but his strengths will overcome a lot of other people's weaknesses, like his big shots, and
But people hate him. That's what's cool. They hate Rolly Romero.
Hey, wait, hold on about saying academic. You know what? I thought about something with Rolly Romero, and I hate to say this, but the way of his fighting style, and the way that he talks a lot, and the way that he's polarized in the boxing game, he could be like Adrian Broner to a certain extent.
I first off, respect to both gentlemen, you too, Jay, but boxing and big. I like what you said, because I was thinking that a lot. I had similar thoughts like that early on with him, and due respect, I mean, he's building his name off a loss right now to Gervonta. Like, Gervonta literally made his name, and it's off a loss. Now he's doing what he's always doing, talking and saying outworldly shit. But I actually think, I don't know. I think most people will beat him who can actually box and fight. Let me just say fight. We know how to fight. They'll beat him.
Jackson Mariñez, should have got that win over him.
Oh, that's right. They did.
Yeah, but there was a guy. Let me throw out a name here.
Academic said, he carries that power, which is a strength, and that's a weakness for other foe. And then let me throw out
a name. Ricardo Mayorga.
Oh man, that guy's done. But
Rolly could be one. He could come in and knock out your favorite fighter real quick. He's gonna step in. That's my prediction. I'm just being controversial.
That's fine.
But he's gonna He's gonna get a fight with a name and cold cock him.
And he gets to do that because it's off a loss. But
and then he'll take two fights and get cold cocked himself. But he's gonna beat some guys.
Sure, but in that loss, and then I'll shut up. What I saw was him at his best competency and keeping a jab, and he showed he could do that rather than kind of do that terrible amateur style where it's just no holds barred. I'm just trying to fuck you up. And then also it was like him being like some Ricky Tiki Tavi shit, like just hopping around the Cobra until the Cobra decides to just whoosh, knock him. But yeah, we shall see. I got some close buddies in the boxing community who are close to him, and they love him. They only talk nothing highly, but bro, it's funny. It's funny stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that he, kind of like is a guy among like like I say with the Adrian Broner or a like I say with Blair the Flair currently, win or lose, the way that he kind of like promotes himself or gets himself out in the spotlight brings enough interest for people to see him. Either they see him win or they see him lose or they see him get knocked out. So we see with that.
Jay, the only difference so I agree with you in that if you bring attention to yourself, whether positive or negative, mostly negative, people will want to see you fight again. But the difference currently, as we speak, the difference between him and Adrian Broner is that I don't think many people are no longer saying I think Adrian gonna give it to it. I think Adrian gonna push forward and give it to us this time. I think we understand that Adrian Broner is who he is. It's only a certain level that he'll get to. It's only a certain amount of punches he'll throw. If he doesn't beat you in speed and agility and everything else, and you throw more punches, chances are you're gonna win the fight. And he ain't gonna press it. He's not gonna go through the fire that he did with Maidana, because that was his best performance in a loss to me. I gained a lot of respect from him, but he has never went back to that place since that point. Rolly Ramiro at least was trying to go to that place. Maybe he may not do that again since getting knocked out, but in that fight, he at least was trying to go to that place. It still remains to be seen, as Clifford said, but we know who Adrian Broner is. The jury's still out on what's his name.
Real fast, academic. I want to piggyback off that. I always said that his career, we'd look at his career differently had he got a rematch with Maidana. I think if he gets that rematch, we are speaking about him in totally different fashion. Win, lose, or draw, because I think that was a major turning point before all this other stuff that we kind of know him as today. And also, with that being said, that's why I kind of got Omar Figueroa winning the fight. I think at this point in Old Boy's career, he deserves someone like Rolly, someone easy. He needs someone really easy to get back on, because I think similar to the Teo situation, man, it's just, a fighter is the fighter, right? He should be concentrating on fighting, not on all this other shit.
Who is he? Who needs Rolly?
What was that?
Which fighter needs Rolly at this point in their
No,
career?
I was saying AB. I use that. I was trying to be funny again, but like I said, AB needs someone easy, someone easier than Omar Figueroa. I think Omar Figueroa is going to throw too much and be in there trying to win. But I do like that it's campaigning at 140. When I heard that a week ago, I was like, oh shit, I know that. And then someone told me he was also training with his father again. However, I still think he'll revert back to trying to admire his work, and Omar's going to keep coming, man. So we shall see, man, because I like AB. And what's funny is, I bet you if this, I'm really being funny here again. I bet you if this fight was pay-per-view at like 50 bones, 60 bones, we'd still buy it. Adrian Broner is still a name.
Yeah, you know, Adrian Broner, obviously he's not as accomplished as this guy, but Shane Mosley, because, Shane Mosley had a third career where he just was a punching bag for a lot of guys. And if Broner wins this, he could kind of have a third career with just his skills. I mean, the guy's got skills and he can beat some people if they're not on their A game.
Word. Well, going into that particular bout that's coming up on Saturday, August 20th, live on Showtime. It's a crossroads bout of sorts. There, at Hard Rock Live in Hollywood, Florida. I was looking at this thing here for the venue. Trying to do like a dot count report of sorts. So we're gonna see about that. But speaking of, real quick before I go through that dot count report, I want to bring in the dot count report king. That's right. He is the president of the Deontay Wilder fan club, Mr. MVO, Mr. Bat in the building.
Who are all these jabronis on my boxing program?
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, wait, real fast, MVO, you're the reason why I'm even on this panel, man. I saw your ass on this shit. And then, but I've been following Jay for a long time on YouTube. But when I saw you on there about 2 weeks ago, I was like, man, I got to get on there one of these days. And here I am. And here you are. What'd it do?
I just came to say what up. Deontay Wilder's on his way back. I'm boycotting all boxing programs until the king gets back in the ring. That's all I'm waiting for. The great Deontay LeSean Wilder, undisputed heavyweight champion. He will be back. It's already in motion. You saw that, JR. You saw that. It's in motion. It's in motion. Why are you laughing, JR? Come on, explain to the people.
Hey, listen.
This is what I mean. A fucking hater. Why are you laughing, JR?
Every time we have something going on, if there's any hint of Deontay LeSean Wilder being in the vicinity or anything is reference to a fight or whatever it is, you gotta come in as the president of the Deontay Wilder fan club and just mess up the flow of the show. I'm trying to keep things uniform.
Listen, he's the only thing that brings every show ratings. I'm trying to help you out. He is the most must-see fighter in the history of boxing.
Whew. No, you gotta say what you said on the midweek report. You said that he is what? The greatest what?
The greatest American heavyweight of all time. And that includes Muhammad Ali.
Yep. Heard that. MVO, so it's for sure going to be Robert Helenius, right?
He's the front runner.
Okay.
Nothing's official yet.
Right.
You know, you never know what can happen in between now and then. But we do know that Robert Helenius is the front runner. And what we might know is that Deontay Wilder may decide to go the WBA route instead of the WBC route so that he can become undisputed champion.
Oh, beautiful.
Now, we got to see what's going to be up in the next, few weeks. We know that there's a deadline of August 26th for a certain person to say that it's official that he's given up everything. There was a report out that said that the Ring Magazine title has been vacated. So the fight next week in Jeddah is going to be for the vacant Ring Magazine Heavyweight Championship. So now we got to see if Mr. Tyson Fury wants to give up the WBC belt. Now, I know that, signs were pointing to Deontay Wilder versus Robert Lemius, October 15th at the Barclays Center. Robert Helenius is ranked pretty much number one in the WBA rankings under the WBA regular champion, the super champion, the interim champion, or whatever champion they got. He's supposed to be the WBA gold champion. I don't know what the WBA doing. Okay. But Deontay Wilder is the number one ranked contender in the WBC, and Robert Helenius is number 10 in the WBC. And, it could be possible for the WBC to make that for what could eventually be the vacant WBC Heavyweight Championship. And yes, I did ask Mauricio Suleiman about that weeks before Tyson Fury was saying, hey, I'm retiring. So we got to see how that goes. You know what I mean? But I guess, once things get a little bit closer and once the formal announcement is made, that Deontay Wilder will be back in the ring, then we'll see more of Mr. MVO on these podcasts because he was in a little bit of a depression with Mr. Deontay Wilder not being active in the ring. Oh, man.
I see you got the Boxing Academic on here real quick. Boxing Academic. Last time we were on the show together, I asked you, can you please say something smart? You couldn't. This week, can you say something smart about boxing? I'm going to ask you every time.
I think he's currently.
Hey Matt, speak when you've spoken to. Don't try to play me in front of other people.
Damn.
Oh,
Shots fired.
Yeah, I love Matt. But Matt telling me,
is that the chef in the building? Is that Chef Terrell? Don't call me Terrell.
Hey, I didn't watch that fight, so I can't comment on it right now. I didn't watch the fight.
Oh no.
But Matt, we were talking about Adrian Broner and Figueroa, so I would like to get your thoughts on that fight.
This is the first step back for AB. He will once again win a welterweight title. You heard it here first.
Wow.
So Matt, do me a favor, Matt. So considering what's happening this weekend with Joshua Usyk too, we know that we got your boy fighting in October, Wilder with Lemius, and like I said, what remains to be played out with Fury. What is your dream path for Wilder coming back in regards to contending for and actually getting in the ring to fight for the heavyweight title again? What's your dream path?
Wilder versus Usyk for the Unified Championship. Wilder versus Joe Joyce for the WBC Championship. And then a returning Tyson Fury. Wilder versus Fury 4 for Undisputed and for Retribution.
Joe Joyce. That'd take a long time though, man. Because you had the fight against Lemius. Usyk, well, we gotta see if he beats Joshua first.
He's gonna smoke Anthony Joshua.
I hope you're not wrong. I hope you better not be wrong on this. Because this would be even worse than you saying Wilder was going to be Fury in the third fight.
Who's gonna smoke? Who's gonna smoke Joshua? I went out for a second. Who will smoke Joshua?
He says Usyk.
He says Usyk.
Oh, okay. I mean, that's a fair statement.
I mean, we'll see. I mean, he's been preparing, for the second bout against Anthony Joshua. We've seen pictures of him with multiple fighters that he's been training with, sparring with, giving them different styles, different looks. And we already know that he pretty much has had the overall experience, from amateur to pro, that he kind of like got in there, like I said, been in the boxing game for a very long time, so, with him in comparison to, like we said, with Anthony Joshua is someone that, didn't necessarily have much of an amateur career, got into the game fairly late, 17, 18 years old, went into the amateur game, went into the Olympics, got an Olympic gold medal. Some people feel like it was a controversial result there. Not as controversial as Lennox Lewis versus Riddick Bowe, but it's still controversial nonetheless. And then, pretty much got fast-tracked to the IBF heavyweight championship against Charles Martin. And once you get to that peak and winning a world title, you pretty much have to fight world title contenders every single step of the way. And so, we pretty much only had, I guess, the one bout against, after Brazil, he had another bout, and then it was, Vladimir Klitschko. So after defeating Vladimir Klitschko, it was just pretty much top 5, top 6 heavyweights from there. So we really didn't have much of a break up to this particular point. So I mean, we'll see how this goes.
Can I ask you a question, James?
Yo.
So naming all those accolades, is that supposed to make him mentally tougher in the ring? Naming all those accolades, is that supposed to do that for him?
I don't know.
Make him have more of an identity, commit to something, go with it.
It should, but the thing about it is he really didn't have that time to. And I think it was that point when he faced and defeated Dylan White going into the bout against against Charles Martin. He really didn't have time to develop or hone his skills at that particular, point, because he had himself a decent scrap against Dylan White. But then he goes up against Charles Martin, and that was pretty much an easy bout. To a certain extent, Dominic Brazil didn't really, give him that much of a resistance there. Then he had his fight against Molina, not much resistance there. And then you go from, 3 fights of not having that much resistance to a guy in Vladimir Klitschko that's, the most experienced heavyweight that was out there available. A guy that was like waiting in the wings to have a Tyson Fury rematch. So it's like, okay, do I train for a Fury rematch? Oh, I'm going to have that rematch. No, I'm not. Yes, I am. No, I'm not. Yes, I am. But he's still like in and out of the ring. So it's like, yeah, now I stepped up in competition from Eric Molina to Vladimir Klitschko. Like, that's a huge gap. You know what I mean? So it's like, so now that you get through that, you have the win, you're at the top, and now when you're at the top, everyone's after you. You've unified 2 belts at that point. Now everyone's after you. Now you got to go after mandatory after mandatory after mandatory, top 10 guys back to back to back to back, where you can't really develop your skills like you were doing in those first, 5, 6, 10 fights of your professional career.
Right, and that's the parallel I made with Teo earlier. If you remember, I was saying once a guy's has reached a certain level, he's gonna have all these expectations. And that's another guy who keeps getting shot after shot is Joshua. You don't have to losses.
Gusto.
Yeah, but the thing about it is that this is something that me and MVO had talked about a while back when it came to Anthony Joshua, is that once you have and you almost see it with Joe Joyce, but Joe Joyce is a little bit more developed. He's had an amateur career, he's had a semi-pro career, but you have those fights like, a Joshua versus Dylan White, and for Joe Joyce, he had to fight against Daniel Dubois. But you see there, like, still Joe Joyce is still having those fights that could, kind of like semi-put him in position until he has his fight here against Joseph Parker, where it's like, okay, we know that he can be there at that world title status, but we're not going to get him against those world champions there quite yet. We're going to see how, we kind of like does against these other guys, against former world champions and so on and so forth. So now with Anthony Joshua, this is kind of like a crossroads bout for him at this particular point, because yes, he does have that lucrative deal with DAZN that's after this bout. But, whatever happens here really kind of like controls how that deal works out for him. If he wins and he becomes, 3-time unified champion, okay, that that's great, that's super, that's cool. But if he loses, like you were saying, Frank, a lot of people kind of like write off these guys when they have 2 or 3 professional losses, and we were like watching boxing in the 80s and 90s where guys with 3, 4, 5 to up to 10 losses were winning world heavyweight championships. So I mean, it's a contrast to what was happening in the 80s and 90s to now.
Well, yeah, and at that point too, though, they could go to local club shows. They could go different places and get activity.
Yeah.
They would even have activity in between world championship bouts. So to me, it's the activity.
Mm-hmm.
So a guy loses, now he's going to come back a year and a half later. It's like, oh, you're not ready for the world class.
Yeah, and the thing about it is that regardless if it's Usyk that loses or if it's Joshua that loses, because they're such high-profile fighters and they've been featured, that once they lose, it's like, are they going to be back in the ring again this year? Probably not. So
and that's also
until next year.
That's also the business too, because you'd have to be willing to take less money to go get some work. Versus I want my minimum and I want to come back and make what I made my last fight. Okay, well, you got to come in tough. We're not going to give you that minimum for tune-ups.
Yeah.
I have a question for the panel. Do you think if Joshua fights an adequate fight, like a generally competitive, but obviously he's going to lose the boxing match. Let's just say he fights a competitive sparring match. Do they take that match away from Usyk and give it to Joshua? Do you think he matters more in terms of, the business that they'll take it away from Usyk if Joshua at least, does moderately well.
I think they try to take it from B-ball, so I think that's your answer. It's boxing, bro. We've seen enough matches go the other way to know that's always a possibility.
Some people from the business.
I always get this confused. Whose promotional banner is Usyk under though? I know his manager, the Ukrainian dude.
Alex
but like, okay, so like, what network do they fight under?
You really don't have one.
I see.
He's just kind of like a guy that could bounce around, and to a certain extent, that's why I think MVO to a certain extent really would like to see Alexander Usyk kind of like come out of this, because it would be easier to a certain extent to have a fight between Wilder and Usyk than it is for a fight between Wilder and Anthony Joshua from a network perspective, because
sure,
you got guys like Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua. Y'all talk about minimums. Anthony Joshua, if he wins his fight against Alexander Usyk, his value goes up once again. I mean, he's the top, pretty much like the top earner in the heavyweight division. And so now he would have that whole DAZN deal be much more lucrative now, or, with him being a unified champion once again. So it's like, okay, now we got to see, okay, if Wilder gets whatever he called the WBC belt when he was holding it for about 5 or 6 years. If he gets that WBC belt once again, you're gonna have a guy that's earning around 15, 18, 20 million dollars a fight, and another guy that's earning about 25, 30, or 35 million dollars a fight. And is it going to be big enough to have this so-called joint pay-per-view that what is it? Joe Markowski wants to talk about, because he wants to talk about swapping fighters or whatever it is. But is it big enough to have a joint pay-per-view like a Wilder Fury 2 and 3?
Well, from just listening to you, Jay, explain that, and then MVO, I've heard him always express those type of sentiments ever since I met him. Look, Wilder's the money guy. Does not matter. Anthony fucked the bag up years ago. Him and Eddie Hearn doing all their practicing in bad faith, in business, saying they're the A side and whatnot. And then Wilder, of course. Nah, shout out to the LDBC, because they're big bomb guys down there, so they'll tell the truth. But anywho, Wilder is that guy. Like, no one's calling out Anthony Joshua. Everyone's calling out Wilder. Doesn't matter who. And when it does come to making those type of fights, the methodology that you're talking about, yeah, Wilder's gonna need the belts, and it's gonna be for the glory and the undisputed. So I see why he's saying that. I see that. But I still want to see Joshua and Wilder go at it, all of them, man. And to what Frank was saying with his examples, he got sped up. Oh well. And then, truth be told, Joshua can fight. Ever since I met you guys, I've always said he gets off the canvas to beat people, whether in a rematch or get up off the canvas and beat them right then and there. But turns out he just, it's mental with him and coaching with him. So if he fixes those and it's all in due time, he should be all right.
Yeah, that's another example. Wilder, he lost, so what? I want to see him. Yeah, and Joshua, I still want to see a fight. Why not?
That's the thing about, you saying, hey, you're not writing those guys off, because, I mean, Joshua got stopped by Andrew Ruiz. He lost to Alexander Usyk. Deontay Wilder got stopped twice by, Tyson Fury, even though one person on this panel feels like, there was a disloyal trainer and a crab in the bucket referee that contributed to what happened.
Yeah.
In the second fight.
Well, Wilder went through hell, man, through that whole trilogy, man. That there was a lot of shady stuff. And shout out to Jay Sports over there, man. Some of that stuff that Wilder was saying, that's why, that goes into play why he can't even come back over here. So a lot of,
but if you love boxing, you want to see
for
Deontay
sure, I love
again. You want to see him, and you want to see Joshua get it on. But
that comes with the package, though.
In their eyes, though, with losses, just the money won't be right for them. With another loss or two, the money won't be right for them to fight.
Well,
It's still a hell of a fight.
Yeah, but real
because
fast there, Jay. Real fast.
Yeah.
Like, okay, fine. I'll grant that, Frank. This is why Spencer Crawford's a really perfect example of it, because since I've been keeping it a bug on that, motherfuckers want to hate. And what I'm saying is, no, if you guys look at the math equation, the A side and B side, and who brings the money to the table, they should get the chunk. Like, there's no ands, there's no ifs, there's no buts, there's no debate. That's what a pay-per-view star is. Or
No, I'm just talking about the losses.
I don't.
That was all I was referring to about guys lose, but we still want to see the fights. As far as the business, it just would hurt. The losses hurt the business side, because if Anthony, Joshua, and Wilder were ever to meet up, the losses, it won't be as big as it was going to be, but it's still big.
Again,
Real quick.
if they fight, just keep it a buck and do what. I mean, that's what I would. If I want my advisor manager speaking like that. So
But real quick,
and that's how PPC goes. Go ahead, Jay.
you know what though? It would be easier. That fight would be easier to make if one or both of those guys lost. That would be the thing. I think it would be easier to make if one or both of those guys lost. If you have, like I said, if you have Joshua win and he becomes unified champion again and becomes very lucrative again, I think it's going to be very difficult to make. But you know, if he loses and he has 3 losses and he has to build his way back up, then I feel like it would be easier for that fight to make there real quick. Going about, you know, it's almost like 2 hours in. You know, I was gonna, you know, touch on a little bit more on the thing with that Broner Figueroa card. But you know, we might, you know, kind of like cut this thing a little bit short here, because I wanted to get, you know, some insight from, you know, each of the people that were able to jump on here in this live conversation on, you know, the topics that we were, you know, able to get on. I know there was something on the live chat about some particular event that was scheduled to happen on Friday night, but it ended up being a whole entire mess with you know, Farmer versus Bay and all of that. But maybe I'll, you know, jump on or talk about that at a later time there. But wanted to get, you know, thoughts on you know the topics that we're talking about. I want to start with MDO first, because I know absolutely what he would pretty much talk about. So I wanted to have MDO jump on first so he could get it out of the way. I don't know. Maybe he might be either at the store or what. So
I'm here. What were we talking about? My bad, my food came, man.
For sure. You got that fork, right? You said fuck them sticks, them chopsticks.
Yeah, man, my food.
Oh yeah, man. Like, yo, he said, man, bump them sticks, man. I'm throwing them jokers, man. Give me a plastic fork.
Goddamn Asian restaurants.
You do know how to use them though, right, Matt?
Yeah, I throw them in the garbage.
That's how he uses
garbage. The garbage.
That's how he
All right,
uses
man.
it.
That's
All
what.
right, yo. Clever. Go ahead, man.
Uncultured.
You're talking about Mickey, right? Mickey's situation.
That was one of the things I was going to talk about, the Tevin Farmer Mickey Bay joint.
Are you serious?
Like, I didn't want to.
Oh my God, I gotta get out of here.
I didn't want to talk about it. I just want to move forward, man.
Jay, who gives a fuck about Tevin Farmer or Mickey Bay? Come on, man. Why are we wasting oxygen on them?
All
right.
man.
That's cool.
All right, Steph, anything else?
So what were you saying to talk about, though, Jay? What you saying to talk about? Because I don't understand.
Right. I'm trying to understand.
No, as far as like anything to, you know, close out, as far as like Teofimo Lopez or Adrian Broner or Usyk-Joshua 2 or whatever.
Gotcha. If I'm Oscar De La Hoya, I'm calling Bob Arum to make that fight so I can embarrass Teofimo. But that's what I got out of that situation. I'm glad Joshua Usyk is here for this coming week. It's about time we see some heavyweights go at it again. That's about it, man. I'm enjoying it while I go. Hopefully Crawford gets to the 12th hour and decides to fight the other guy, Spence. We'll see.
So you're saying Ryan Garcia beats Teofimo? That's what you just said, right?
Yeah, based off what I saw last night. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, there you have it from Clever, man. Going to Boxing Academic.
I want to believe that Anthony Joshua will find an identity that will allow him to like dig deep, to not have a silver spoon, to not have things always sort of go his way. And when he faces adversity, he sort of just allows that adversity to overtake him. I have to give him his credit. When he fought Klitschko, he faced adversity and he beat a man who was also ready to quit as well too. But had Klitschko had a little bit more, now that I see what I see from Joshua, I question if Klitschko could have got past that last knockdown and then got through that round or whatever, then Klitschko still would have been doing well because Anthony Joshua would not have had win, and I don't think he would have pressed the issue based off that. This is all, hypothetical. Joshua won. He pushed through. He beat Klitschko, and that showed his fortitude. But after that, Andy Ruiz, we saw his fortitude in that fight. Joseph Parker, he just kind of like went through the motions in that fight. With Usyk, he didn't even, I'm not going to say he didn't try, but he was okay with just losing and didn't want to go to a place that he would have to have went to, which is be the bigger man, because he knew he was at risk with how hard Usyk hit, that Usyk had the potential to hurt him. And so in this next fight, will Anthony Joshua be the bigger man? Will he be the man who, can try to use some foot movement? Probably not, but will he be the bigger man to press the issue to make Usyk be the smaller man? Will he go to that place? I just, based upon what I've seen him and how everything has gone his way, I just don't know. I do not know. If anybody has anything contrary to that, please tell me.
You know what, academic? That's a really good point, man. Here he is. He got the American trainer. I would have been more comfortable with him actually coming over here and training for this fight with that American trainer, no matter who it was. But, listening to your whole thing, man, I'm just going to try to be patient and watch his new change come about. Because, yeah, there's still questions going forward. But like I said earlier, like you said, if he decides to be the man, he'll get up off the canvas and beat that guy and knock him out. So I've seen him also do that. I've seen him do that before he kind of went through all this adversity of late. So I'm with that. I drive with what you said, man.
I mean, we're going to see a lot of questions being answered in that particular bout. For me, I kind of
be patient, though. You just started working with Robert.
Yeah. We got to see how he is with Garcia.
But to me, that tells me. I'm sorry, Jay. I'm so sorry.
No, I was saying the thing with real quick. The thing with Anthony Joshua when he was with Robert McCracken, and I've seen this in his bouts against Andy Ruiz Jr. and against Alexander Usyk, is that to a certain extent, Robert McCracken was more of like a cheerleader than anyone that made adjustments during a fight. Sometimes the thing on the trainer that makes him good or great is not like how they do when their fighter is doing good all the time, but they deal with adversity, like Boxing Academic was saying. Like, what are the adjustments that you're going to teach your guy to make in order to adjust to being behind in the fight or being in trouble in the fight or anything like that? And it was very evident in the Usyk fight that you kind of like seen Rob McCracken in the corner be like, yo, that's great. Yeah, that's great, Anthony. That's great. That's great. Instead of like actually showing like what he needs to do to make the adjustments in order to have the advantage and actually end up beating Alexander Usyk in that particular case. You really didn't see that, you know? And so Joshua was actually learning on the fly there against Alexander Usyk, who is a much more experienced fighter than he is. Now we got to see here with Robert Garcia, you know, there in his corner, how he's going to react to someone like Alexander Usyk, who might or might not have a different type of approach to Anthony Joshua here in the rematch that's going to be coming up on August 20th. That'll be 12 p.m. Eastern time, and it'll be shown live on the zone. Wanted to, you know, get to Frank here real quick, and then Terrell.
Can I say something in response to that? This is my last. I'm gonna stop being talkative. This is my last thing, Jay. So, Robert Garcia, to me, again, Anthony Joshua is faceless. He's an identity. Identityless. He is lacking a true identity. Him getting Robert Garcia, to me, is a ploy to have a trainer teach him a more aggressive style so he can, on the front end, plan A, go out, express his dominance, and win a fight off of that. We all know that's not going to happen. We all know he going to fight a guy who's going to box him, who's going to beat him in the boxing match, who's going to punch hard enough to where he keeps him honest, because Anthony Joshua is chinny. From there, no disrespect to Robert Garcia, but Robert Garcia ain't going to be able to give him instruction the same way he wasn't able to give Mikey instruction when he fought Errol Spence. Like, okay, to his defense, it ain't much instruction you can give to fight Errol Spence, but he ain't going to be able to give him instruction to say, you know, try this, do that. He gonna all but be a cheerleader too, because once that plan A stop working or he gets tired, the only thing he gonna say is, keep pressing, man, keep pushing. You can do this. You got it. I'm done. No more talking.
He should boxing academic. He should pay him less for that then, you know, because that's. And then also just listen to you, man. Hey, man, you got Anthony losing, man. You got him losing, dog.
Anthony has to go to a place to where he's willing to get knocked out, to where he's willing to knock him out to get knocked out, because he does not win a boxing match. He does not win over 12 rounds because he has poor win. He does not have better win than Usyk. How else can he win the fight other than pressing him and hurting him early? He ain't gonna win a boxing match.
There could be another way to do it, but is he willing to be patient enough to do it and have the, I guess, the wherewithal to do it? Pressing the action is one method. The other method is biting down on your mouthpiece, taking a punch to give a punch. Because if you know that you're more powerful than he is, you got to be able to wait to take a punch in order to set up a shot and trap him. But that remains to be seen. All right, Frank, then Terrell.
Okay. I was just thinking as you guys were speaking, just some parallels. Tio and AJ, you know, guys that shot up really fast. They lose and we want to call them frauds. And that's something I was, you know, I'm always going to talk
Frank
about.
is we can't on that, man.
Yeah, because, you know, look, if Joshua comes back, which I think the best thing for boxing is a Joshua win, which sets up the biggest fight in probably the beginning of the century. So if you're a boxing fan, you want Joshua. That's my opinion. But, you know, with Joshua, yeah, if he wins, then he wasn't a fraud. I mean, guys lose. We spend a lot of time talking about guys who are just not going to fight and aren't going to fight. And they got to 0. Wow. Congratulations. So, yeah, that's why I want to see Ryan take on Teofimo Lopez. I think that's a huge mega fight. And just like Joshua Fury will be a major mega fight. And as a boxing fan, that's what I want to see. I don't care if the guy has an O. I don't care about the other stuff. I mean, I know the business is always going to be something, but as a boxing fan, you know, I just want to see the fights. So that's my take on the situation.
Yeah, I mean, from a business standpoint, you know, you do want to see Joshua kind of like getting the win here. You know, like we were talking about with Alexander Usyk. being there under Krasniak and Aegis Klimas, I think it is. With
There
the
you go.
from owner, that they don't necessarily have any type of network or anything in their country, outside of their country, that has them be a major draw. So now it's like, hey, we got to see if Anthony Joshua comes out of this bout, gets the win, kind of like, boosts up the heavyweight division from a financial perspective, and kind of like gets things going back up, when it comes to the heavyweight division once again, because, you're going to have, Deontay Wilder, running things in the American side, but outside of America, who's going to be that guy? And right now, I mean, if it's not Anthony Joshua, you really can't, say much else, because Tyson Fury, even though he, is undefeated, he defeated Wilder twice, he's not moving the needle. Just being straight up, he's not moving the needle.
He's a clown show, Jay.
Yeah, so that's the thing about it. It's like, if you don't have, I mean, shoot, that's why some people are claiming that Tyson Fury, having his retirement is, looking like a bunch of hot air, because he's waiting to see what's happening or what's going to happen with this Usyk-Joshua rematch. So
yeah, and if I could just add on to that, that's one thing about Teo and Ryan Garcia. You can think what you want about them, but their names in the 140-pound division is making it a hot division. So all these guys like Projas, Ramirez, that's their biggest payday. It's not each other. Teo wins, Garcia wins. That's the money guy. So, they need those names in their division before they can make money.
And that's something there as far as like with Teo and Ryan. I mean, before Teo had his fight last night, and Oscar De La Hoya being there, and I guess, a couple of days before, whatever it is, when people started to talk about it, like, I really didn't expect that to be a fight that would have been talked about. But, for both of those guys, it could really catapult, one of those two guys, if they're able to get a win there, particularly if they're able to stop, one of those guys. That's going to be something there to kind of like look out for. Gonna go with our brother Terrell, and then we're going to close it out here.
Yeah, I'll be brief here. So in regards to the heavyweight division, we know, we got Usyk-Joshua next week. And with Fury, there's no way in the world I believe this guy's retired. And like I said, Jay, he is at this point just sitting back, waiting to see who's going to win, to see what possible matchup he can generate in that point. Because how do you go from like proposing to fight with Dillian White again, which is just rhetoric and stuff like that, and then all of a sudden you just want to retire? To me, that was just him about wanting to make noise, because he's been left out from the heavyweight point. He's just making noise.
He's weak-minded.
Yeah, he just want to make noise and entertain people and things like that. With that said, he's just simply waiting back to see who's going to win, to see what he can do, to see what possible matchup he can generate. And like you guys said, the best favorable matchup is for Joshua to win. That's where that generates a possible matchup with Fury back home in 02 or something like that, whatever, things like that. Whereas if Usyk wins, it doesn't move the needle. It doesn't, regardless of who he fights and stuff like that. So what it said is best for Joshua to win, like you guys said. But at the same time, it's crazy. One thing I would say, when a guy has time to grow up in the division like Usyk has, I mean, as much as people want to see Joshua win, I don't see it, because Usyk has had time to grow up in the division, and I can't wait until Friday for weigh-in, because I've heard that Usyk has gained a significant amount of weight while being able to maintain his footwork, things like that. So I can't wait to see what the weigh-in is and see what he comes in at. So there we go.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just when you said that, it reminded me of something. If Usyk wins, is when when Bernard beat Tito Trinidad. That's what it'd be like, because Bernard killed the Roy Jones Tito Trinidad fight. They were gonna do it at Yankee Stadium.
Yeah, the thing about Alexander Usyk, he kind of like entered the heavyweight division around, under 220 pounds. And in his first fight against Anthony Joshua, he was just about a shade over 220 pounds. And with a couple of pictures and things like that, he's kind of like looking a little bit above 230. If he goes into the weigh-in at like 235 or something like that, and still has the movement, that's going to be something for Anthony Joshua there. And from the first fight, my thing from a basic standpoint is with Anthony Joshua was that he's facing a southpaw, and one thing you can't do while facing a southpaw, especially if he's quicker than you, is having his lead foot be outside of your foot. Because not only is he first to the punch with his right jab, but he can do a right jab left and then get out of the way. And you can't do nothing to smother him. You can't do nothing to really counter him or anything like that. So he's going to have to learn how to make that initial adjustment, one. And then two, I say, hey, you're going to have to bite down on your gum shield. Because if you kind of like built yourself to be a good counterpuncher, let's see how good of a counterpuncher you are if you're able to say, hey, we could figure out what Usyk's going to do and then catch him. Because being aggressive against someone like Alexander Usyk off the rip, I'm not sure that's gonna be his best method. I really don't think he could fully cut off the ring against someone like Alexander Usyk. It's gonna have to be something where.
But Jay, you said it earlier. I'm not saying you're contradicting yourself, but like you said earlier, like he's gonna have to be patient. And I said that earlier with my statements earlier with him too, where like, here he is working with Robert Garcia. So I'm just gonna have to be patient with what they're trying to implement. But like you just said now, yeah, he can't just go in there and rip it. He's gonna, you know what, I like what you said. He's gonna have to be patient and then bite down, because that's what's gonna take. He's gonna have to counter Usyk, because Usyk's never gonna be in one spot. And shout out to Frank with Bernard. I've been watching. Probably for the last 3 nights, I've been watching a lot of Bernard Hopkins fights on DAZN. What do you know? And then I'm watching.
He ruined the mega fight of the decade with that. Tito Trinidad, Roy Jones, and Yankee Stadium would have been.
I thought he also beat Jermaine Taylor, and Jermaine Taylor won as well. I'm on that shit. And then I am watching Usyk Joshua 1 right now. I'm in the mid rounds. Joshua can do it. We'll see.
So you guys said that he has to be patient. Is Robert Garcia the type of style that teaches his fighters to be patient, or are you saying be patient and counter? So you pretty much letting somebody throw a bunch of shots at you, and then you just land that as Joshua says, shot from the gods, and that's your version of patience. I would argue his best thing, which I don't know if he has the ability to do it, but Joshua's taller, right? He has an arm length advantage. I think Joshua has to be patient in the sense of fighting off his back foot, jabbing, making Usyk come to him, and instead of him going to Usyk and Usyk counter him, hitting him with shots and doing all that other stuff, Joshua has to be the one moving backwards, make Usyk come to him, make Usyk run into some shots. Is Joshua's feet good enough to do that? Probably not, but hopefully they are.
I think so.
You know what?
That's good too.
That's good. I want to watch the rematch between Joshua and Ruiz. To a certain extent, he was a little bit aggressive with throwing the jab, but he was also stationary. I want to see if he was able to throw that jab while backing up as well, because he's gonna have to use that reach advantage. He can't. I just don't feel like he has.
Actually, Jay, real fast. He knew Andy was also too weak in the chin, and he had put him down twice before. So he wasn't. That's why he stood his ground. That's why he stood his ground right there.
Yeah. So my thing is that I think that he has to kind of like be either stationary, throwing the left jab, or throwing it with his kind of like backing up. Because I really don't think that, trying to be, coming forward or aggressive could really work. Because not only, what was it, that first fight that he had, Usyk with Joshua, but there was other fights that he had at cruiserweight where they kind of like show clips of him, moving away from moving away from his opponents. Like he'll, throw a right jab and move away, or he'll kind of like crowd and then turn. You know what I'm saying? Like he learned those things over the course of his amateur, semi-pro, and professional career that says, hey, I'm not going to put myself in a position to like kind of be in that much trouble. And like to me, like in the heavyweight division, Chisora was the only one that kind of like, made Usyk be uncomfortable to a certain extent. But Chisora is like, he's like a weird fighter in the sense that he could, pretty much get at you in different ways, or he could try to set up shots, or at least in his, current point of his career, all he's doing is trying to bait his opponent and try to hit him with a, haymaker. But we'll see how Joshua kind of like approaches this fight early.
You're cooking, Jay. You're cooking, man. But I'm not saying here I go saying you're contradictory, but you're not, because you're saying good points on both guys. One thing I want to say about Usyk, though, look, they laughed me out in this space when I said this the first time. Look, Usyk's always been a heavyweight. He's always cut weight to come down to cruiserweight and below if need be. So I don't really make too big of a deal about him putting on weight and stuff. I just think he's gifted there from the father there. He could move that well for a big man. And then I love what you just said at the end there, where, he was developing over time here, and he figured out a style to where, like, I'm just going to hit and not be getting hit. That's his style. So in contrast to that, you have to make Usyk fight. So I'm going to come back to what you said, Jay, just moments ago. I like the idea of Joshua boxing on the back foot. He's going to have to counter him and truthfully make him fight. You're going to have to make Usyk fight you, because Usyk otherwise is just comfortable. And then also, I'm surprised no one said this. I haven't heard this, in a while now. Joshua's conditioning, man. That cardio. Like, I know he can do it, but like, I think he overexerts himself with that pressure that's ineffective. So I'm also watching for that. And then also, academic, when I think about it, your example, your last comments, I think he just brought in a new voice that he's comfortable with, cheerleading him on in that aspect. Because you're right, his style is a little, as far as teaching, is different than what we've all been saying. But I think overall, whatever they want to implement is there. But he's gonna have to make him uncomfortable and make him fight, pretty much, and then just to cheerlead him on, a new voice. So. Yeah,
we're gonna see how that's gonna turn out, man, and it's gonna be something. My plan is next weekend I'll be out there for the Hard Rock or the Seminole Hard Rock thing for Broner Figueroa, but that afternoon I'm gonna be tuning in for this particular bout between Alexander Usyk and Anthony Joshua and seeing what happens there, and then. After that, like I said, Broner Figueroa, and we'll get right back at it, next week to talk about, the results of those fights there. So I want to thank everyone that took the time to be here on the live podcast. Thank everyone on here, Frank Terrell, Emmett, Clever, NVO, YSM. I was able to jump on in here for a little bit. Like I said, we get right back at it. This time trying to, make it on for Sunday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. And, like I said, at the end of every show, folks, point of boxing is to hit and not get hit, not to stand and trade. On that note, folks, I'm out. Have a good evening, everybody.
Thanks, man.